All right, folks. The clock shows 7 o'clock, so I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting of the Dunn County Board of Supervisors to order. We will begin as usual with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, if the clerk will call the roll.
Supervisor Johnson. No. I know he's on with us.
Yeah, I believe he's online.
Here.
Thank you. Supervisor Pat Breslin.
Here.
Supervisor Headland.
Here.
Supervisor Score. Supervisor Steen.
Here.
Supervisor Zons.
Present.
Supervisor Gary Bjork.
Here.
Supervisor Wilsey.
Excused. He's not online.
Supervisor Quinn. Supervisor Rogers.
Here.
Supervisor Witzel.
Here.
Supervisor Kinnear. Supervisor Barrier. Supervisor Calabrese. Supervisor Keeter. Online.
Here.
Supervisor Vogel. Supervisor Sean Breslin. Supervisor Vandermeulen. Supervisor Robinson. Supervisor
Excused.
Morehouse. Supervisor Hagan. Supervisor Thomas. Supervisor Prochnow. Supervisor Gilbert. Supervisor Larry Bjork. Supervisor Bauer. Supervisor Leno. Supervisor Hartung. Chair McCullough.
Here. All right, on to approval of the minutes. Supervisor Steen moves. Supervisor Morehouse seconds. Any speaking to the minutes? Seeing none, all in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye. Aye.
Motion passes. Presentation of petitions, memorials, and other communications. I don't have anything, Chris. All right. Public comment. Do we have anyone from the public who wishes to speak at this time? Coming up, state your name and residence, and we will give you 3 minutes, or maybe a little more.
My name is Brian Westrate, and I actually live in Fall Creek, which, as you probably know, is not in Dunn County. So I am a field representative for Congressman Derek Van Orden, born and raised in Eau Claire, live in Fall Creek now. Myself and my colleague Tom Webb are the 2 field reps for Eau Claire, and Dunn is one of the counties of our responsibility. Based out of Eau Claire, we're down in the federal court building down in Eau Claire, which I lived in Eau Claire for 44 years. I've never been in before. So we're in there. You get to go through security when you come visit us, which is fun. I get to go actually take my belt off every day when I go to the office. And if I go to my truck and back into the building, I get to take it off again, which is really fun. To give you some idea of how the federal government works, we're 9 weeks into this, and we still can't figure out who has to approve me to not have to go through security to come to the office. So that's the type of thing we're facing in our job. But Congressman Van Orden is on the Ag Committee, the Veterans Committee, and the Transportation and Infrastructure Committees, 3 committees that will not get you on MSNBC or Fox News, but they do allow you to make significant difference in the lives of the people of the 3rd District, which, as you all know, is largely agrarian, and we have the most locks and dams of any congressional district in the country. So with the Farm Bill coming up, the Farm Bill out, we have created Ag committees for each of the 19 counties in the 3rd District, including Dunn. And we're going to be meeting on a monthly basis to help advise the congressman about ag issues as the Farm Bill is being debated and passed. So that's kind of one of the big pushes we've done. Also, there is a 3rd District art competition, which every high school in the district, including Menominee High, we've invited to submit student art to hang in the Capitol, to be judged, and one piece will be chosen to hang in the Capitol. So if you know any art teachers, please encourage them to encourage their students to submit. But I gave everybody a card. Literally, my job is to be available to you, both as constituents, if you have an issue specific to yourself, or as representatives of Dunn County and the people of Dunn County, if you have an issue specific to Dunn County. As a congressman likes to say, where the rubber meets the road, right? He likes to say, what button can I push? If it's not federal related, we're happy to call a state senator or a state assembly person or write a letter on behalf of a project, but there has to be a federal nexus for office to really, try and help. And we're there to either help the federal government get in your way or out of your way, depending on what your issue may be. Up to and including, I think we've had over 60 cases passport. The passport office is really backed up. And so we're getting people calling saying, I paid for 6 to 9 weeks. It's 12 weeks. I'm supposed to get on a plane in 3 days. And so we've been able to help those constituents do things like that. So at any rate, you've got my card, that phone number, this phone, I carry it all the time. Happy to help in any way I can. Again, whether it's connecting you with somebody at the state level, if you think we can help, or something at the federal level. So thank you all very much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Brian. I very much appreciate it, especially since I got to renew my passport this week. Any other public comment? Anything, communications? All right. Appointments? No appointments this time. I think that may be a first for me and one of the very few times I've been on the board. All right, on to reports to the county manager, Chris.
Good evening. You have in your packets the purchase orders over $40,000. Are there any questions about that? I did include an explanation page for the bond issues, but are there any additional questions? Supervisor Lino?
Of the bonds?
No,
No? No.
there you go.
Okay.
No. Would you like Beata to speak to that?
Well, or do you want more depth or are you okay with that?
Well, as far as we could go, I kind of looked like, from what the debt was, it was written on the form to, what the payment was, almost looked like we had it paid off or darn near.
Yeah, Beata, why don't you come on up?
Okay, sorry.
Yes, those are annual, so we pay interest twice a year. And we pay principal once a year. So what you're seeing is one principal payment, and that doesn't pay off the debt that we currently have. So
Okay.
we still have outstanding debt. It's just annually, we pay about that 5 million is what we budgeted, roughly about 5.1 million. So those are our debt obligations, including interest.
Okay. Thanks for the clarification.
Yep, not a problem. You're welcome.
In other activities this month, 2 weeks ago, 6 county board supervisors and myself, as well as Heather Kuhn from the Register of Deeds office, attended the Wisconsin Counties Association Legislative Exchange. It's Supervisor Dunn, Supervisor Lino, Supervisor Steen, Supervisor McCullough, Supervisor Bjork, and Supervisor Larry Bjork and Supervisor Bauer. And I just I found it a very valuable day. We heard, or 2 days, we heard from the governor, the Supreme Court sent candidates, majority and minority leaders, their staffers, some media pundits. Those are the ones that come to the mind off the top of my head, but I wanted to open up the opportunity to any of those who attended to say a few words about, share my report and say a few words about their participation if they wished.
Supervisor Gary Bjork first.
Thank you, sir. Because we're having a meeting like on the 25th for capital improvements, and that kind of stuff. Could you tell me if we were not out of debt, how much interest we are actually paying right now? So you can kind of put it into some kind of perspective that if we weren't paying for previous debt, we'd have a lot more money to have it. So what is our annual interest payment, just on interest on our debt?
So I don't know about interest alone. Our annual debt service is that just a little bit over $5 million. So I don't know about interest alone, and Beata can find that number.
Okay, I'd like to know that. Thank you.
Do you want that addressed at this meeting or are you comfortable having that addressed at the?
I think it should be brought up at that capital improvement. It just kind of we talk about borrowing money, well, if we weren't borrowing money, if we got our house in order, all of a sudden we got a lot of extra money that we're not paying on interest, we could do some of these capital improvements.
All right, we'll have that number for the
Okay, any additional, anybody
Uh,
else?
Supervisor Larry Bjork.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, first of all, group, she's a good driver. And, on a and alert on the writing on the side of the trucks, whether it was correctly written out or not. But we went down on a snowy day and I felt perfectly safe with her rolling along at 70 miles an hour, passing the big trucks. For me, the most interesting was the getting to listen to the two candidates for the state Supreme Court, Judge Janet Prosevich, and then Justice Kelly. And both real intellectual, well-spoken people with a lot of knowledge. And my only come away from there was that it's too bad that race will probably spend $15 million and dredge up every bad thing they can think of the other person on both sides. So if judicial is to be nonpartisan, it's become a war of dollars, and it's sad because these are two really well qualified people, and it makes me feel bad that we have to tear them down so bad. So that was my editorial, but that was my best part of the program.
Thank you, Supervisor Bjork. Supervisor Steen.
Yes, I'd just like to say that I thought it was valuable. It's a chance for us to meet the legislature and gain some knowledge about how things work, broaden your knowledge of how Wisconsin Counties Association and Wisconsin boards can approach the people. And I think I would urge any board member that would want to should try to attend that. I think it's well worth it educationally, and the fact that you get to mingle a little bit and talk to some other counties, see how they may or may not be doing things. And I think on the way back, the car was unanimous that we thought it was a good thing. I don't know whether the other guys are going to speak up. Are you going to speak up, Jim?
Supervisor Zons.
Well, since I was put on the spot by Supervisor Steen, yes, I thought it was quite valuable, and I'm going to echo what Supervisor Steen said, that I encouraged the other county board supervisors who have never attended either the legislative conference or the annual Wisconsin Counties Association meeting to kind of make it a point to attend. Your cost of attending is covered. You do get your stipend for attending a meeting, but beyond that, you learn so much in the breakout sessions and from the speakers that talk to you, that it's well worth your time. And I think I brought up at the executive meeting that it was good to get some one-on-one time with at least one of our local legislators who spent quite a bit of time with us at a mixer, and it was good to bend his ear for a good half hour about important issues for Dunn County. So make it a point to attend the next meeting. There, did it.
I will just add that, yes, the county will pick up your fees for the meeting and per diems for the days that you're at the meeting. It is a fantastic opportunity. I think one thing that I took away that was particularly useful was there was a session on solving wicked problems. And it was problems that are difficult politically, not necessarily technically or from a finance position, but how do you approach difficult political problems? How do you make sure your stakeholders are involved? How do you make sure that you're transparent? How do you come to a solution that may not make everybody happy, but will at least make everybody believe that they were involved? And that was a particularly useful session. Oh.
if anyone's interested and they want to put it on their calendar now, the Wisconsin Counties Association Conference is in September, Sunday, September 17th through Tuesday, September 19th. If you're interested, it'll be in the Kalahari Resort in the Wisconsin Dells. And I'll send out a reminder of that as we get closer to registration. But if you're interested in attending, and it sounds like that's a popular thing to do with the supervisors, not only driving with our county manager, but socializing as well, right, Jim? So.
I only have room for so many, so you better sign up quickly so that you can get to ride with me. All right, and then lastly, in our continued Beata's and my continued and Chair McCullough's continued efforts to give you some additional tools in your toolkit as we approach already beginning to talk about 2024 later this month in the capital improvement workshop. And then we will be putting out budget instructions already probably in April. So it is speeding along. So I thought it was really helpful when I did a little bit of a deeper dive into what exactly is meant when we talk about levy limits, but more importantly, what is meant when we talk about net new construction. You hear that term tossed around. And so I want to take you through a quick PowerPoint just to show you some of the things that I have learned. So levy limits themselves have been in place since they were established in the 2005 to 2007 state biennial budget process. And originally they were tied to, sorry, I have to hide something here so I can see my PowerPoint. Initially they were tied to the net new construction rate, but there was a floor. So we were guaranteed a 2% increase each year, at least a 2% increase. If we didn't have new construction that reached 2%, we would bump to the 2%. If it went over, we would be paid the over amount. And then in 2011 through 13 budget cycle, that 2% guaranteed increase was eliminated. So now we no longer have that. So our ability to grow is with new construction is based solely on the net new construction number. And we're going to look at that in just a minute. Property taxes used for debt service are exempt from the limits. So that $5.1 million is on top of the levy limit. And then limits can only be exceeded by referendum. So I think it's important to understand two terms that I think sometimes get a little bit mixed together, but they really are very different. And I'm going to tell you that I did read this sort of several different times to partially grasp. I wouldn't even say fully grasp kind of the idea, but so we have assessed value and equalized value. And assessed value is that value on properties that the assessor attaches in all of the places across the county or the municipality, and used to distribute the municipality or the county's tax burden. So you see the assessed rate on your tax bill for your property. The equalized value then goes through a formula through the Department of Revenue to make uniform the numbers, and it essentially kind of makes it more of a market value instead of just your assessed values. So you probably all know in looking at your assessment that very rarely, I don't know if ever, but very rarely is your assessed value equal to your market value. So equalized value is essentially last line of this PowerPoint is essentially all the residential, commercial, manufacturing, productive forest, other farm sites, farm buildings, et cetera, and personal property, the market value of all of those properties together. So in Dunn County, like a lot of other counties, and I did have Andrew put this out on the website this morning or this afternoon on the under the county meeting public calendar. So you can go out and grab this and take a deeper look at it if you wish to. You can see in Dunn County, like a lot of other counties, our equalized value has continued to grow largely, actually, if you look at between 2021 and 2022, if you think about all of those housing prices that we hear about, some of that starts to be reflected in these numbers. But our number essentially didn't quite double between 2014 and 2022, but it did go up significantly. So what is net new construction? Well, net new construction is the amount of new things that were built in the county minus the value of anything that was demolished. And then this is divided by the equalized value, and there's a percentage. So you can kind of ignore the last line just to know that there is a way that the percentage is come up with. So these are tiny. And again, this is why I provided it to you, but I wanted to show you what our 2022 net new constructions numbers look like. And you can see them by town and municipality, city, and then the county at large. And you can see that they vary dramatically because, again, looking at all of the value of all of the property minus whatever was demolished, you see that the numbers range from a negative number in the town of Grant I guess that's not even the largest one. Largest one would be town of Downing, a negative 0.47% to, I believe the highest one is town of Sherman at 3.11%. And then Dunn County's itself is 1.35%. And you can see those numbers, equalized value of $3.8 billion. And then the net new construction number, and then the percentage. And all of this information a lot of this information that you're seeing is out on the Department of Revenue's website. They have a lot of information out there if you ever want to just go and poke around. You have nothing else to do. So this is just a illustration of our net new construction over time. So if you recall back at the beginning when it was established that we would have a 2% floor, the only time that we have ever since 2009 been above 2% is in 2018. Otherwise, Dunn County has always fallen below 2%, but there's nothing to be made up with that any longer. And you can see that it's kind of gone up and down a bit, but we took a pretty significant decrease again in 2019 and 20, a little bit of a bump in 21, and then back down in 22. So last year again was 1.35%. So I just wanted to do an illustration based on the Consumer Price Index monthly change. And I took the end of the year. So I didn't take the time to average out an entire year, but I took the end of the year, the December rate for the Consumer Price Index. I took the net new construction numbers for each of the last 7 years. I started with a round number of $20 million, which is roughly our levy. It's a little bit less, but $20 million. And if we had $20 million to spend and we had 1.2% net new construction, we would have had about $20,240,000. But as you can see, that 1.2% is somewhat significantly below the Consumer Price Index of 2.1%. And it's kind of models around between the two figures, the net new construction and the CPI over time until we get to the last few years. So you can see each of those years, I just did the same calculation, kept adding the net new construction on. So over a period of from 2016 to 2022, we would have grown from $20 million to $22,141,421. But again, if you look at 21 and 22, our net new construction numbers were 1.6 and 1.35%. And the Consumer Price Index was 7 and 6.5% in December of those years. So in no way, shape, or form did the net new construction number even come close to keeping up with what the costs were to continue to do business. So options for spending additional levy. One is to exceed the levy limit by referendum. In 2009, the county board passed a referendum to exceed limit by $500,000. a year for 5 years to fund the Dunn County Healthcare Center, now the neighbors of Dunn County. So that is one option. There's a timing to all of that, and we've talked about that sometimes occasionally in this meeting, probably more in the executive committee meeting. But there's a certain, as with all referendums, there's a certain time frame in which they have to get on the ballot and there's approval. So it's not something that you can decide to do at the last moment and have happen. The next way to spend additional levy is really not about spending additional levy. It's if you do, we have to do something more by doing less of something else. So then, and this is how I've explained to many people over the years about the issue with levy limits. Even if you all unanimously agreed that it was the best idea in the entire all of time to add a new service or a program or staff, if it will cost additional levy or additional monies to do over what's now being spent, the only way to do that outside of a referendum is to do less of something else. So if you wanted to spend, I'm just going to use numbers and pick on a department. If you wanted to spend $1 million more in the sheriff's department, then you'd have to spend $1 million less across the other departments or in another department. There is not a way, simply because it's a really, really good idea, to tax more. And then the third way to increase our purchasing options or our spending options would be to encourage building and development and to increase that net new construction number. And from previous conversations that we've had that that's why economic development is important, because it's one of the ways that we can grow those numbers. So kind of hand in hand with this, and I just struggled with whether to stick these in the same PowerPoint and then just decided to. This was a piece of information that I think struck all of us as we were at the legislative exchange. Because you say, well, okay, levy limits, they are what they are. I believe in them. I don't believe in them. Whatever your stance is on of that, then what are the other forms of income that we receive? And one of those is called shared revenue. So we gave you two documents. I gave you I gave you 2 pages of this PowerPoint that I'm going to review in just a moment for you to take a look at. And then I also gave you, and I try not to give you things that I haven't read thoroughly, but it literally came out at about 4:15 this afternoon, and the source is reliable. So from the Legislative Fiscal Bureau, which is a nonpartisan arm of the government or piece of the government that helps to take a look at the fiscal impact to things, they put out on pages, I don't know if they're printed on there, but pages like 576 of the report. So if you don't have anything else to do, you can read that. But 576 for the next several pages is the analysis of the current proposals related to shared revenue in the governor's biennial budget proposal. And I don't, read at will, but just thought I'd give you the background since we were going to talk a little bit about shared revenue. So shared revenue is just a government unit's sharing of a part of its income tax income to other units of government. So the state of Wisconsin shares part of the taxes collected back to us. What does that look like? So this was, I think, the slide that stuck out for us when we were at the conference. If you look back in 1997 and you look at all of the sources of revenue in all of those colors related to running county government across the state, shared revenues or state aid was 46.4% of the funding of county government operations. And then that dropped by 2005 to 34.9%. And in 2019 was 25.9%. So when you combine those two items of a hard cap on the top of what we can spend related to levy and a reduction of the shared revenues, although they're not a huge piece of funding, I will show you in just a moment kind of what it would have looked like if some of that hadn't happened. So this is what our shared revenue numbers look like from the year 2000 through 2022. And as you can see, we started out 2000 with about $2.7 million, just under $2.7 million of shared revenue payments, also called county municipal and utility aid. There are two payments, but they go together. And then it went up for a few years and then dropped, plateaued for a number of years, took a precipitous drop, and then has tiny bit eked up over time, but now sits at roughly that $2.4 million. So I took a moment to just calculate, had we received $2.7 million in the year 2000, and it had been supplemented at a modest 2% a year until now, that last number of $2.4 million would be $4.4 million. So you can see the impact that the reduction of shared revenue has had. So it is the topic of conversation. I share it with you now and not in April, only because you'll begin to hear the conversations in the media, if you follow WISC politics or any of the things that you get as a part of being a part of the Wisconsin Counties Association memberships. You'll begin to hear the conversation about shared revenue. There's all kinds of proposals and conversations about what that should look like going forward. But I wanted you to have a little bit of background around Dunn County and what it looks like here so that you would be able to feel like you were an educated participant in those conversations. Any questions?
Supervisor Lino.
Quick question, Chris. Has this information been sent to our representatives?
No, I just compiled it today.
Okay, could we forward that on to them with a little note saying, hey, how about it?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Supervisor Hagan.
Comment. This information is really great. When I decided to be a county board supervisor, going around asking questions and getting signatures and whatnot, this was one of the things that people were asking about. So I think this is good information. If we can, I mean, it's up on the website, but seeing the decline of state aid and the increase of what us locally have to pay. I mean, I'm sure county services have not gotten cheaper over the same period of time.
Right.
So seeing that and just letting the public know, hey, things are expensive, such as what we've seen with the highway department of everything, and seeing that we are getting less money and less aid offered from other sources that is costing more generally just to keep the very basic upkeep of what we need in the county. I think that's one of the things that people are really looking for. So I really like this. Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, if you think about it in a practical sense, if you're in your personal budget, you had taken a cut from 46.4% to 25.9% in what it cost you between the year 2000 and now, most of us would probably be a lot thinner.
Yeah, this was one of the things that had come up at WCA that I thought would be particularly useful for the board to see. And it's also worth noting that while state aids have gone down, the state's requests of what they would like the county to do have gone up.
Absent any other questions, that concludes my report.
Any other questions for Chris? All right. On to reports of departments. We'll begin with Register of Deeds. In the packet. Oh, okay. In the packet, CJCC is first, apparently. Sorry, Heather. Sarah, Judge Mayor, Judge Peterson. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Sarah Benedict. I'm the Criminal Justice Director here in the county. I am the coordinator of our Criminal Justice Collaboration Council, and I just want to thank you for the opportunity to have a couple of minutes to speak with you about the good work that we're doing at the CJCC. And I brought a couple of guests to talk about to profile a couple of our programs that we have. I'd like to also thank all the CJCC members. So for those of you that aren't familiar, the CJCC really is a forum of government and criminal justice leaders, also leaders of other systems like public health and human services. We get together on a regular basis and we really look at our local data. We try to understand some of the challenges that we have, the trends, and then also opportunities. So what we're able to do is really reach consensus on areas that we want to improve, bring in experts and training to learn more about what's working and what is effective out there in the criminal justice world. And then we're able to really respond quickly to different grant opportunities that come up. So we've had a number of accomplishments in 2022, and I'll let you read all about it in the report if you haven't already. But I guess I just want to highlight that we did really work to strengthen the collaborative programs that we have up and running, like treatment court and family treatment court. But we also were able to bring in some more funding to start some new programs, treatment in jail that brings medication assisted treatment, and law enforcement deflection and diversion initiatives to really get us started in developing those programs and implementing those programs. So I just wanted to take an opportunity to introduce myself. I would be happy to address any questions before I turn it over to my colleagues, Judge Jim Peterson and Judge Christina Meyer. All right.
Supervisor Larry Bjork. So hang on, you get your microphone.
Thank you, Ms. Benedict. Looking at the highlights in your 2022 report, I go down to the July of 22, where $150,000 state grant for law enforcement deflection for sheriff's office. How does that fit into your program? And listening to what Chris just said, as far as if money goes to someplace, it has to come from someplace else. So anytime I see money coming in, I say, well, where does that go?
So the money coming in, thank you for the question, is state funds that have come down to our county. These are actually federal funds that the state wrote a grant for, and then the state is able to distribute grants. So we were one of the pilot sites. We wrote a proposal and we were accepted to really expand Project Hope. Many of you may have heard of Project Hope in the city. Really looking to reduce the impact of substance abuse on our community, not only to the individuals that are going through that themselves, but their families. So by us bringing in additional funds, it really was to develop that within our sheriff's department to bring it to the greater community. So that includes youth diversion, deflection, and adult diversion and deflection. So they have made some progress on some of those areas, and they're still working on some of the other areas. But really what that does, it brings in $150,000 to our county to outfit an officer to really go out there and do it. We essentially branded them a behavioral health officer. So they're looking at individuals that are at risk of overdose or have overdosed and try to get them connected with treatment. But they're also looking to do diversions and deflections. So for individuals that are coming into the criminal justice system for the first time, or would be considered at a lower risk, there are more effective things that we can do with them than to put them into the traditional criminal justice system. When there's underlying treatment needs, if those really aren't tended to, usually the criminal behavior will continue. So these are really new tools, new ways of us doing business. Things are changing out there and we need to change as well. And the funds help us to pilot to see how things will work in our community. But then we're also helping the state write the standards for the entire state for them to develop these programs as well. So it helps us get going, but also be a leader in these areas. So I don't know if I addressed your question directly.
Well, you did, because I wonder what happens when the $150,000 is gone to that individual. But then also, excuse me, what's an example of diversion and reflection?
So deflection is really somebody that is not in the criminal justice system, and we don't want them in the criminal justice system. So we know officers are first responders. They're going out there, all sorts of different calls. So this is a way that they really have the skills and training to be able to connect an individual with treatment or medication or whatever will best be for them. So that is really that kind of first responder area for the deflection. For diversion, it would be for a first-time offender coming into the criminal justice system. And this is what is to be developed yet, so it isn't finalized. But really looking at lower level crimes that are really underlying treatment needs. So if law enforcement, they've been very successful in other communities across the country in really using their presence, using the respect that law enforcement have, and make the connections to treatment. So it's a different way that law enforcement are serving the community. And it's more effective because what we're seeing are public health issues of addiction, mental health, taking over the criminal aspect, meaning we're not seeing these, the general crimes that we're seeing are more and more related to underlying substance use and mental health and trauma needs. So unless really punishment does not work, vast majority of these individuals. So it's really a behavioral health challenge that we have. So it's equipping our officers with the skills, knowledge, and ability to really handle the individuals that they're seeing out there in the community. And the funding is going to continue. If we do a good job and we see that's effective, then we have more grant opportunities that will be afforded to us through the state. And the federal government is certainly putting their money towards these programs. In general, the United States can't incarcerate ourselves out of the challenges that we have. We have to have better tools and handle individuals differently. So that's part of why we're able to bring in a little bit of seed money to really try to develop these programs. And then in time, we'll see, are they making a difference? And is it something that we want to continue to do within the county? But we're really focused on bringing in the opportunities, bringing in the funding that can allow us to try some of these things. And some of the funding is coming year after year after year.
Okay, one last thing. So would I be right in saying that this particular officer would act as an advocate for the person? I don't want to call them a criminal, but I don't know if they broke the law or not, but are they an advocate so that that person goes to the district attorney and says, well, you need to give this person a break before they go see Judge Peterson?
That's one way that we could go about it, but essentially it's at the law enforcement level that the charges don't even proceed to the district attorney's office. Currently, our district attorney does have a pre-charge diversion program that allows officers to already do that with certain types of low-level crimes. But officers like to do their job, and they're going out there and they're detecting criminal activity, and they're writing the reports and they're sending it down the line. This really brings that closer to the officers themselves by embedding a behavioral health officer that would spearhead the diversion and deflection within that agency. She already has the trust and the rapport of her officers. So if they're encountering somebody that maybe has possessions of drug paraphernalia, so instead of putting them through the criminal system and having a criminal record, and then creating more individuals that come through our system where we need more attorneys, more judges, more everything to really sustain the system itself, this really allows that officer to already exercise the discretion that they have. They already determine if they're going to give a ticket or not. But this really allows the person to say, oh, we're going to refer them to the behavioral health officer. That behavioral health officer is going to get them connected with treatment, see how they do. And if they don't follow through, then those charges will go through the system. So it really is an opportunity to get people at the point of crisis, to get them connected with treatment, to motivate them towards change. And then if they don't do that, if they don't follow through, there still is the accountability of the criminal justice system. But it really allows individuals to early on get the treatment that they need. So hopefully that they don't come back to the criminal justice system.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I hope I didn't take all 5 minutes.
Yes, just a couple quick questions. First one is, one of the highlights you had said is firearm surrender mapping. What is that?
That's an opportunity that came to us through the Battered Women's Justice Project. They were looking for community sites, 5 sites across the nation that would really examine their restraining order and firearm surrender process. Battered Women's Justice Project is out of the Twin Cities, and the executive director is a Menominee native. So she reached out to Menominee City Council and asked if we would be willing to do this. It came up to the CJCC level. We had all our leaders hear about the opportunity, and it's really opportunity to learn about best practices, and then also to examine our own system to see if we have some gaps or areas that we could strengthen, mainly related around restraining orders and domestic abuse. So we were able to take part in that and do some mapping. We didn't find major findings as far as areas to improve. There's a little areas here and there that we can increase our communication processes, but overall, we're following the law and following the expectations that we should. So it was just an opportunity to self-examine our system and to see how we're doing and improve anything that may come of that. So that project's still ongoing. We're still working on different areas to learn more about it, to see if there's areas to improve. But it really is a project that just helps us strengthen our existing laws.
Okay. Second question, if I may, is the Drug Endangered Children Program. Maybe I didn't read this right, but why was this program disbanded? Did the problem go away?
No, not at all. So
Okay.
through the years of our Criminal Justice Collaboration Council, we were really good at creating new meetings and new groups. And one of them, with all the different groups and what we're trying to do, once those behaviors are systemic or embedded, we don't need to necessarily keep meeting to create or implement. So the Drug Endangered Children Program was implemented, and it really is the collaboration and partnership with our human services and law enforcement, ensuring that they're working together, they're reporting information across agencies, and they're really keeping kids first when they're out there doing their work. Where it's about protecting kids, it's about communicating, and it's about making sure that everybody does their part, so we don't have any gaps there. So it is a team because we don't need to have work group meetings on it anymore. So it's up and running, and we're gonna get reports a couple times a year on the activities of the Drug Endangered Children staff, just to make sure things are operating as we expect them to.
All right, good. I was a little worried. I thought we were dropping the ball here.
No, nope, taking
Okay.
more balls on, not
All right.
dropping.
And then really the one of the other things that I had a quick question of is that in the past regarding recidivism, one of the goals for your organization and everybody in general is to hopefully reduce that. Do we have a number out there? In the past, I saw a recidivism number. Haven't seen one in this report, just wondering where we're at.
Yeah, I tried to shave down this report a little bit. Instead of the 50 pages we had last year, it was down to 13. But the CJCC does an annual recidivism report of our different programs. So we just had one published in October, and it's on our website, but really looking program by program, the recidivism, and then we're doing some comparisons to the prison population and what comes out of that. But it is kind of different fruits that we're measuring a little bit as far as different individuals, different crimes, different outcomes. But overall, we are looking for the programs to be effective and reduce that recidivism. And we find that it is more harm reducing and crime reducing than prison route. And I would say, our jail, we have a lot of good programs up and running in our jail. So I think even our jail probably recidivism rate is going to start to go down with some of the good programming that's going on there.
All right, thank you. And then one final question regarding that state patrol officer who was hit. Any update on his condition?
No, I have no information to share or nothing other than what I see in the media. I
All
don't
right.
know if my
Not
guess.
if I'm just curious, that's all.
Okay, thank you.
That's it. I'm done.
Any other questions? All right. Seeing none.
Okay, I'd like to introduce Judge Peterson to talk a little bit about treatment court, and then we'll have Judge Meyer follow talking about family treatment court.
All right. Well, good evening, members of the board. I'll try to keep this brief. I know it's really a complicated topic, and I would be happy to talk with any of you individually or small groups if you have more interest. But I've been involved with our adult, we'll just call it adult drug court. We call it treatment court. And this began in about 15 years ago as called diversion court, with Judge Stewart and Judge Smeltzer. And then Judge Smeltzer and I did it together here for a number of years after I started in 2014. And the thing about, when I was a teenager, I think for the first time I heard the term, politics makes for strange bedfellows. And I didn't really understand what the heck that meant, at the time. But adult drug courts and other problem solving courts, we'll hear from Judge Meyer in a moment. That is something that has brought people together, bipartisan across the country, Republicans, Democrats, independents, because drug courts work if they're done right. If people are trained, if you have a good team and you're faithful to the model, there's a lot of training. So as I say, it's very complicated. We're not going to get into the weeds on that, but I really, thinking about in just a few minutes, what I would want to say here tonight is thank you for supporting our drug court. And thank you, Sarah, for how much money you bring in from grants and things like that. But we we meet every Wednesday morning at 7:45 a.m. for a staffing. And then we begin court at 8:30. And we try to get done by 9:30. And so you're welcome. It's open court if anybody's interested in coming and watching. But the idea is, some people are turned around pretty well with a punitive system, and our criminal justice system overall is a fairly punitive system. Some people are pretty resistant to that, particularly if they have an addiction. And we've got a big problem with methamphetamine addiction in this county. And I think just about everybody that's in our adult treatment court program right now is addicted, has a methamphetamine addiction, substance abuse disorder. And the adult drug court is for high risk, high need people, and sort of an alternative maybe to going to prison. Because most people who go to prison, especially for relatively minor drug charges, they're coming back. And they're not meeting, in prison, the kind of people that are going to make them better citizens when they come back, except maybe, some programs. Our prisons are overcrowded. But the treatment court, one of the big things that they operate on is the idea that you have more positive reinforcement coupled with negative. Try to keep it 4 to 1 ratio is an evidence-based practice. I sent someone to jail today as a punitive part of it because we use sanctions, but also we try to give them praise and encouragement and a reward for working on their sobriety and so on. But like I said, people are complicated. Addicts are very complicated. And the system is very complicated. And but I think we have a good team. We work hard to stay up to date in our training. And so with that, I think I've said enough. I'm going to turn it over to Judge Meyer, who's been doing the family treatment court. Well, I don't remember how long, but anyway, Judge Meyer, thank you.
My name is Chris Meyer. I run Family Treatment Court. Treatment Court has a different model than it's a similar model, but the Family Treatment Court is about people who have had their children taken away by the government. And how do we figure out how to get them sober so they can have their children back? And so the difference in the model is that I don't get to sanction, not really. I don't get to send anybody to jail. Everybody, their punishment has already happened. They lost their children. Currently, there's, I think 11. Sarah, is that right? We have 11 participants right now, 5 of whom I would call rock stars, who have more than 180 days of sobriety. We returned 2 children this week, which if I was in family treatment court, I would clap. We clap a lot. Our goal is to provide services to these people so that they can get their children back. In addition to that, you talk about the money saving. We keep track of what we provide. So if they don't get their children back, the county has a way to show, if they're going to terminate the parental rights, the county has a way to show all of the services that we've provided to them to try to help them get their children back. And so, like I said, our program is a little different than drug treatment court. They don't have as much power. But we're very positive and we clap a lot and we encourage people, and I hope, well, we're scheduled to have 3 people that are going to graduate within the next 2 months. And so I expect those 3 people to graduate within the next 2 months. I don't know if you want to know more, because I could talk about family treatment court for a really long time. I've been doing it since February of last year. And so, and our program doesn't, if you look at the numbers in the report, of course, our program hasn't been here for very long. How long, Sarah? 2019?
Yes.
2019. And so we don't have numbers going back. We're not a 15-year program. But I am very encouraged by the number of children we're returning and the amount of positivity I get from people. I have heard, sometimes I ask in court, okay, well, where would we have been? Where would you have been a year ago? What would that look like today if you weren't here? And they would be not sober and not having their children back. They wouldn't have jobs. They wouldn't be where they are today. And so we're very, very proud of them. We're very proud of them for the hard work they do. And I'm very proud of our program. And I'm also very proud of Sarah. I think we're very lucky to have you. Does anyone have any questions?
Supervisor Steen.
Yes, I assume that, or I don't know, do you track the cost savings for a parent that gets the children back versus one that doesn't get the children back and they stay in our system? Do you track the?
Hey, Sarah, do you track that?
Not that specifically, no.
That's really hard to track. And the reason it's really hard to track is because if children are adopted out, then there's adoption assistance, which comes from the state. If children are long-term guardianship, then there's guardianship assistance, which also comes from this. Some of it comes from us, by the way. But those permanency options are very difficult to track. I did guardian ad litem work for years and years and years. Most people know that. I can't tell you how many terminations I was involved in and how they don't always turn out. We have a rosy picture of these children running to the new foster parents and life is beautiful. And it's not like that. And I was involved in a number of failed adoptions, and those are heartbreaking. And if we can prevent those, if we can, probably the people who are most going to love that child is their parent. And so we generally, if we can get them sober, we generally don't have failed parenthood. So I don't know if that answered your question. It kind of veered off and I'm sorry, but.
No, and I just want to thank all 3 of you for your empathy. You're wearing your heart on your sleeve. I can see that. And it has to be a very challenging environment that you work in. And I just want to say, from my point of view, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Supervisor Thomas.
Thank you. Just a quick question. The programs that you're speaking about, are they kind of a statewide thing, or are we the front runners with these programs? Because just like Supervisor Steen just mentioned, I think that it's very obvious that you're passionate about these and programs and helping people find a better way than through the dire going to jail or wherever they would end up, which I like to see happen personally. So
I have and Sarah might have a better answer than I have. I have an old brochure here that's from, I don't know what year, that says there's 100 treatment courts within the state of Wisconsin. We have 72 counties. Our county has 2. Eau Claire County has 3. I don't know how many St. Clair County has. I think they're more on this side of the state. I think on the eastern side of the state, I think they don't do as well over there.
And I can note from having been on the board a long time that when I first started on the board, we were doing something that looked at both addiction and mental illness in conjunction. At that point in time, Dunn County was one of 3 counties in the country that were doing it. So it's been picked up a lot, but we have been on the cutting edge of some of it.
Can I just add one thing there? Yeah, just one little aside here. When we were trying to get a third judge for Dunn County, one of the conditions was that you had an operating and functioning treatment court or drug court. And so we did, and we had that established. So that's one of the reasons that we were able to get a third judge.
Supervisor Calabrese.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Judge Mayor, does your court have a regular meeting time like Judge Peterson's does?
Yes, we meet every Tuesday. On alternating Tuesdays. The first Tuesday, we have a meeting with the treatment court team, which is an hour and a half. The next Tuesday, we have a half an hour, which is the treatment court team, and then we have an hour with the participants.
Okay, thank you.
In addition to that, it seems I spend a lot of time on family treatment court, but we also have what do you call them, Sarah? The meeting on Friday.
Oh, treatment team meetings, monthly meetings.
So we have a monthly meeting to talk about our process, to talk about, in our Tuesday meetings, it's about the people. The other meeting, the once a month, is to talk more about us. Or what are we doing? Are we doing okay? What could we improve on? Those type of things.
Sure. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Supervisor Hagan.
Yeah, Judge Meyer,
Yeah.
one more thing. Sorry. I was just wondering, when you were talking about families that graduate from the program, is there any follow-up or following those families further on down the road, or does it get transitioned to a different department? And how long does that usually last?
So it depends on, that's the best answer. But to be in family treatment court, the family has to have had their child taken away from by the government. And so there is what's called the CHIPS action. And there's always a CHIPS action underlying the participants in family treatment court. And so sometimes it depends on when the child was returned to them, how soon before they graduate, a number of those things. But oftentimes they stay with the social worker for a length of time after they graduate from drug treatment court. They don't get to graduate, or from family treatment court, they don't get to graduate unless their children are returned to them.
Okay, thank you. So once their children are returned to them and they graduate, there's a social worker that will keep in touch with them for however much time in the future.
So our program is generally people are the 2 children that I talked about that are those 2 children that are being returned this week. The adult that's getting those children back is in phase 4. He's in phase 4. And so we have 5 phases. There's a whole nother phase for that person to go through before they graduate. So after the kids go home, generally, they're still in family treatment court. And so the kids aren't just thrown out there and say, off you go. They're in family treatment court. And then after they graduate, then usually there's some period of time, and I can't tell you what that period of time is. It depends on the case. Then they stay with that social worker.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome. Is there any other questions?
Does not look like it. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much.
All right, Register of Deeds. This time for sure, Heather.
Up back to follow. I'm Heather Kuhn, Register of Deeds. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you tonight. You have in your packet my written report. And I just wanted to mention that Chris was talking about equalized values. And those values, those equalized values are derived in part by the sales recorded in our office. And then she mentioned, well, and then those elevated property values, then that equates to higher transfer fees collected by our office. And then Chris also talked about shared revenue. And hopefully we'll have a resolution coming before you to request the state to change the transfer fee share formula. Right now, the split is 80-20. The state keeps or takes 80% and the county gets to retain 20%. So that resolution is a request to change that formula to 50-50 split. And it was discussed at the Wisconsin Counties Association, the legislative exchange. So it was nice to see it mentioned in the budget talks. And it was my first time attending the Wisconsin Counties Association Legislative Exchange, and I too thought it was valuable. It's just nice to be able to hear directly from the state representatives, state leaders. And my highlight was when Supervisor Larry Bjork asked the speaker that was an attorney if he received his law degree in Wisconsin. He did answer that question. So tonight I wanted to share a video that Krista in IT has been producing informational videos for social media. And you may have already seen it, but I just thought she did a great job in capturing all things related to vital records in our office.
Welcome to the Register of Deeds office. I am Heather Kuhn, your Dunn County Register of Deeds. We maintain the history of Dunn County, its land, and its people. Our office is the official county repository for both real estate and vital records. Thanks for taking time to learn more about the services we offer.
In this video, we're going to cover all the steps to request a vital record. But first, we need to cover what a vital record is. Vital records include birth, death, marriage, and divorce certificates. Our office can provide certified copies of those vital records or life events that occurred in Wisconsin. Dunn County vital records date all the way back to the mid-1800s. It wasn't a law in Wisconsin that vital records had to be filed until October 1st, 1907. Prior to 1907, the records were hit or miss. Individuals could choose if they wanted to register their records during that time. So you probably want to know how to apply for a vital record. There are a few ways you can apply: by mail, in person, or online. Head to the Register of Deeds section on our website. On the right-hand side, it'll say Purchase Vital Records Online. Click that and it'll give you all the options you need. Our website also provides vital record applications in PDF format. Click on Vital Records Applications. If your record is previous to these dates, contact the county where the event occurred. Don't forget your ID. These records require proof of identification. If applying in person, bring your original ID, and if applying by mail, a photocopy is required. At least one form of ID needs to show your name and address. There are limitations on who can obtain a certified copy of your record. It needs to be for yourself, for an immediate family member, which includes spouse, parents, siblings, or your children. These are the types of IDs we accept. The processing times vary depending on how you request your record. In-person requests can typically be completed in about 15 minutes. If applying by mail, it is basically mail time, as requests are processed the same day. For online orders, you have a couple of options. You can pay for overnight shipping or 2-day shipping. All certified copies cost $20 for the first copy and $3 for any additional copies if ordered at the same time. We accept cash, checks, and all major credit cards. A service fee will apply if paying by a credit card. You received a copy of your record, but you see an error. What do? Vital records can be amended through an amendment process with the Wisconsin Department of Health Services or by a court order, depending on the type of error. Talk with the Register of Deeds office or find more information online at the Wisconsin Department of Health Services website under the Amending a Vital Records section. Keep in mind, all vital records you apply for in our office and online are for Wisconsin only. If you're looking for a record from another state, you can find that information at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention website in the Where to Write for Vital Records section. The Dunn County Register of Deeds office has been pretty busy with vital records requests. Good thing we have such an amazing and knowledgeable staff. In the last year, our office issued over 5,000 certified copies. I think that's it. We covered all the information needed for you to be successful in requesting a vital record. Now you know what vital records are, the history, how to request a record, the cost, and what to do if there's an error. If you have any questions, you can contact the Dunn County Register of Deeds office Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. Thank you for taking the time to watch our video about vital records, and keep an eye out for more videos in the future.
That's all I have.
Thanks. Does anyone have any questions for Heather? Supervisor Quinn.
Yeah, Heather, thank you. I'm glad you mentioned the real estate transfer tax, and it fits in very well with Chris's point about how the state has changed the rules, because we used to get more revenue. I wonder if you could, I looked at the 2020 expenditures and revenue sheet, and I think I have the numbers, but do you know off your top of your head how much we collected, how much we retained, and how much we had to send back to the state?
Let's see.
Closest.
Yeah. I think it was close to.
Like 890.
Yeah, so it was close to $1 million.
Right.
And then, yeah, so the split is the county retained 179,000 and the state 715,000 was the split.
So our resolution, when we get to it, and our request on our legislative agenda was to revert back to a 50-50 split rather than the split we have now, which would result in a fairly significant amount of money staying with us that we used to have but don't have anymore.
Yeah, and I should clarify too, when the split was 50-50, the formula was $1 per thousand based on the sale price. So then when they changed it to 80-20, they did increase it was $3 per thousand based on the sale price is what you had to pay. So there was an increase for the counties as well at that time. It was in 1981 is the last time that fee has been changed.
Supervisor Gary Bjork.
Because you run a real good department, could you tell the board how much money that you actually put back into the county fund?
Sure. I'm always pointing this out to my committee, so they've heard it a lot. But for 2022, it was 97,000 that we were able to return to the general fund.
Any further questions for Heather? Doesn't look like it. Thanks so much. All right. On to 10, consideration of reports, resolutions, and ordinances to the county board from the executive committee. First, resolution A 2023 budget adjustments and 2022 carry forwards. Again, pretty routine money that didn't get spent in 2022 that needs to be moved to the 2023 budget. Grants come in, expenses go out, pretty much the balance sheet. I would need a motion. Supervisor Morehouse moved, Supervisor Bauer seconds. Any speaking to the motion? Seeing none, I believe this is a roll call.
And we will be using Supervisor Steen's favorite system, your voting machines in front of you. So there should be the three options, a yes, no, or an abstention, and I will start the vote now. Well, the supervisors present are voting. Supervisor Johnson.
Yes.
Supervisor Johnson votes yes. Supervisor Keeter.
Yes.
Supervisor Keeter votes yes. Thank you, two. Touch the screen.
I had the same problem, so.
Okay, that, all the votes are in, that passes. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Resolution B, 2023 budget adjustment for Health Department, Department of Human Services and Land Information. Pretty much the same thing. Routine bookkeeping. Yes? Oh, yeah, the vote passed. Supervisor Steen. Supervisor Steen moves, Supervisor Hagan seconds. Anyone wish to speak to the motion? All right, again, roll call and 3/4.
And yes, we will have that. Really.
The technology will be ready momentarily.
No, Gary. We'll only move forward. All right. Voting is now open. Supervisor Johnson.
Yes.
Supervisor Johnson votes yes. Supervisor Keeter.
Yes.
Supervisor Keeter votes yes. All right, that is in as well. That passes.
All right, motion passes. C, resolution approving the 2022 opioid settlement agreements. Nick, do you want to give us some background on that one?
Let me pull up my notes here. All right, I'm running behind. Technology is not my friend tonight.
Or while we're waiting for Nick, we might as well get this procedurally ideal and have a motion to approve in a second. Supervisor Zons, Supervisor Rogers.
Okay, opioid settlement. Back in November of 2017, the County Board of Supervisors passed a resolution authorizing the county to retain attorneys. We entered into an engagement agreement with several law firms to pursue claims for recoupment of county expenditures relating to the opioid epidemic. Thousands of counties, cities, towns, local governments throughout the United States and a number of states joined in a very large, not really a class action suit, but it's a large multi-district litigation. So every state, all making claims against the same defendants. That process started in late 2021. There was a settlement with three largest distributors and Johnson and Johnson and some of its subsidiary companies. That settlement, or participation in that settlement, was approved by the Board of Supervisors in December of 2021. Our attorneys have continued on pressing the claims and negotiating with the defendants, which is very heavily supervised and coordinated by the court. Right now, almost not all of the litigation, but almost all of the claims, a vast majority of them are bunched up in Ohio before one judge who's managing. He has people working with settlement oversight, working with the plaintiffs' counsels, working with the defense counsels. And so most recently now, 5 defendants have entered in or have basically proposed settlement agreements. Those settlement agreements have been approved by the court. There's some general requirements that monetary proceeds have to be used for programs and services, activities that are used to abate opioid addiction or abuse. There are some other aspects of the settlement, including some I think I remember this word. Some restraining orders that require some of these defendants to limit how they market, promote, sell, distribute opioids, and changes in how they handle their internal processes, including compliance, training for pharmacists so that they're mindful, I guess, of a need for a different approach, diversion, suspicious order monitoring, and anything that raises a red flag. The 5 defendants are Teva, which is slated to pay, and again, this is thousands of plaintiffs, and the amount of the settlement proceeds is indexed to the level of participation around the nation by all of the governmental units that have claims and an opportunity to elect to participate. So assuming maximum participation, Teva will be paying $3.34 billion over 14 years, and provide 1.2 billion of its generic version of the drug Narcan over 10 years, or $240 million of cash in lieu of product. And that's states can decide which of those 2 alternatives they'd prefer. Allergan, the second defendant, would pay up to $2.02 billion over 7 years. CVS would pay up to $4.9 billion over 10 years. Walgreens would pay up to $5.52 billion over 15 years. Walmart would pay up to $2.74 billion in 2023, and then all additional payments to be made within 6 years. So, and these are estimates at a high level. Wisconsin is looking at receiving, over the varied payment schedules, and again, understanding this is an estimate, these are all estimates, 321 billion, I'm just going to say $321.4 billion. Of that, the state will receive distribution of 30% of the amounts paid, and local governments within the state will receive 70%. I've been told that the allocations for all of the governmental units is going to be identical to what was used in the 2021 settlements. In 2021, Dunn County's allocation was 0.442%. So using the maximum, full of hope maximum estimate, and then using that as a multiplier, it would translate to just a little less than $1 million for Dunn County to receive over the course of 10, 15 years, as each of the defendants makes their pay. And so at least 85% of the funds have to go directly and have to be used for abatement. And as I said, services and activities that are related to abatement. And so the county, you have a number of materials that were included. There's an April 18th, 2023 deadline for local governments to opt into this settlement. If you don't opt in, then you must pursue these claims on your own. Or negotiate your own settlement, I guess. So there's a resolution that requires county board approval that would approve Dunn County's participation in the settlement with these settling defendants. There's a state and local government memorandum of understanding. The county has to, in order to participate, the county has to enter into an agreement with the state and all of the other local government participants, setting out the terms and conditions. There's also an addendum to a local government allocation MOU. I'm told this is not quite yet ready, but it will be. Or I should say there's an addendum right now, and I think there may be another document that comes that provides a little greater detail. I also provided you with a copy of the case management order from July 23rd, 2021. This is from Judge Polster. And essentially, for counties that don't approve participation in the settlement, we got about 90 days to get, well, exactly 90 days to put ourselves in the same position that this army of attorneys has gotten everyone into already in terms of presenting or preparing for trial. And so the resolution that you're considering is to whether to participate in this settlement. And if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
So short version, there's a pile of money on the table. If we would like our share, we need to approve this resolution or indulge in a great deal of lawsuits that would probably eat up whatever we had. So it's, do we want the money or not is basically the question. So any Supervisor Steen?
I move.
We've got to move. We got the motion in a second already.
Okay.
Supervisor Larry Bjork.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess who can turn down money, but just a couple of things. First of all, all my time on the county board, I've never heard anybody saying, well, the cost of opiate addiction in Dunn County now has reached this particular level or that particular level. I don't think we have a department of opioid expenses. So is this just something where a certain amount of opioids were sold in Dunn County, and we can assume that a certain percentage of that was misused, or is there actual a figure? And then the number two thing, and probably the more important of the two, and you mentioned an army of attorneys. It's really cheap to just say we need the money, but of the settlement, what percentage actually is used up in the litigation, and what percentage do you think probably actually goes to the counties or municipalities?
Well, the agreements that we have with our council do require payment of attorney fees. So far, the settlements that have been approved by the court have all included additional funds from the defendants to be paid into an attorney fee trust fund or whatever, so that claims can be made against it. I think they're anticipating that there may need to be some collection of fees from from what the counties receive in this round. I don't remember the percentage, but I mean, it's an attorney. It's not 30%. I think it's. I'll be honest with you. I don't know off the top of my head. I could probably look it up in less than 5 minutes if you want me to. And in answer to your other question, yeah, we have not marshaled the documentation that we would. So if you guys said no, we're not going to participate, it would fall on my shoulders to press this claim. We don't have that, assuming I don't quit before I get home tonight. We don't have that data in a ready evidence form. They use populations, statistics of crime, statistics of death, any information that they can get their hands on to try to create an algorithm that provides a generally reasonable estimate of all the costs that government incurs. It's not just about addiction and misuse. If someone dies, the medical examiner has to respond, the fire department has to respond, law enforcement has to respond. Foster care that's brought about from addiction leads to additional costs. There's a lot of stuff in there. And they've worked through dozens of templates for an algorithm to try to figure out a fair distribution. And so they've got economic experts and medical experts that are working on trying to fine tune the settlement. And so we don't have I can't punch into the computer and find the figure for Dunn County. But that's the one they've come up with as a reasonable estimate. And in a way, it's kind of a compromise. They're saying we aren't going to, look for every scrap of paper that tells us, how much it ought to be, because as was noted, it costs probably as much as the actual funds received. So there's a compromise in there, but it's very, 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 very thoroughly vetted by the courts and the experts that the court has appointed to work with all of the parties on this.
Supervisor Hagan, did you have a question?
Yeah, I just have a couple of questions for clarification purposes, if that's all right. I noticed there was a 20% attorney's fees, I believe is what the number is. And from that, I was wondering, how does that get paid out? Is that from the 80% that goes to the local areas? The 20% is taken from that, or is that something set separately?
It's from the total pot.
But how is it taken?
Well, 20% of what we receive is what we would be responsible for. And then if there are funds in the attorney trust fund or whatever it's called, if there are funds in that are available, so legal counsel can apply to receive payment from that. And whatever's not covered under our fee agreement then would come out of the distribution that comes to the county.
So then with that, so you say we are responsible for the 20%, do you mean
No. 20% fee on what the county collects. So Dunn County doesn't pay for the whole state. The Dunn County would pay 20% on what Dunn County receives.
Okay, great. And then from that, what I was wondering further on into that area, it was I'm just curious if the settlement for some reason this is a span from 6 to 15 years, if at year 7, CVS decides to file for bankruptcy or whatever, and if for some reason payments stop, are Dunn County still responsible for the 20% over the next however many years?
Well, there are risks. There are risks in settling with a party when if you don't have all the money in your pocket when you leave the room, and you're going to take payments, there are risks. The Wisconsin Counties Association, in coordination with their legal counsel and the law firms that have been representing all of the states and local governments throughout the nation, have given consideration for ways to I think it's called securitize or monetize the settlements if like in our case, the county board is interested in looking into that. There have been several financial institutions that have been, once again, very, very, very thoroughly vetted by the courts to determine their appropriateness for being able to buy the settlement, so to speak. And so that's always an option, but there are risks. And as the chair noted, it's a pile of money on the table, and that's not for nothing,
For sure. I have one more, but I'll wait.
All right, Supervisor Patrick Breslin.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Quick question. I'm always looking at what strings are attached. So with this, we have a pile of money, let's call it a mill, 85% of which must go toward abatement. So that's either current programs that we have or ones that we'll be developing. The question then becomes is what happens when this nice little bucket at the end of the rainbow is empty? Does that mean the taxpayers then start picking up the bill for these programs?
No.
No, I would believe it would be the way we traditionally handle one-time grant money, which is it's just funded to the end of the funding and then we're done.
All right, thank you very much.
And a lot of the uses that it can be used for are very simple, almost binary, kind of like transactions, like putting an extra, I don't know, is it Narcan? Is that the right word? Putting an extra Narcan dose in each squad car in case they encounter someone who needs it. So you can buy that or set up extra counseling, or you could support the treatment court for different things. So it isn't a matter of hiring, dozens of employees to do this. There's a lot of options. In fact, we've already been receiving settlement funds from the previous settlement for a little over a year now, or just about a year. And our human services director has been busy thinking of great ways to utilize that to make the world a better place.
Supervisor Steen.
Yeah, Nick, correct me if I'm wrong, but the attorney's fees would be deducted before the money's paid to us.
Yes.
That's correct.
Yeah, whatever.
So we wouldn't be on the hook for any more money because they're going to get theirs.
Well, yeah, they, as an attorney, I can tell you, I think you're right. And lawyers are.
Supervisor Hagan, did you have one more directly related?
Yeah, just more of a procedural question for the monies when it's approved and sent to us. Does it go to a specific committee, or does it come back to the board to allocate to whatever areas it is deemed appropriate?
No, it's received in the Department of Administration. Right now, I think Sarah Stabenow is receiving it, isn't she? It gets put into a special account. There are auditing and accounting requirements that are connected with this, that are part of the overall program. I mean, I apologize for the length of this, but the judge basically said early on, I'm not going to let you all go in there and just get a whole bunch of money and do anything you want with it. This is a lawsuit about opioid addiction, opioid abuse, and if you're going to get something, you need to use that money responsibly to abate the problem. And so that was a premise that, I mean, almost from day one, when the very first settlement was whispered, that was the response from the courts. And so it's very heavily regulated. There has to be accounting for what it's used for, auditing, special auditing requirements and so forth. So, but it doesn't go back to any committee or board for allocation for this or that. It just comes into the county and it's used as part of our budget planning. sometimes to replace levy funds or to supplement them.
Supervisor Kinnear.
Thank you very much. Isn't there a committee working on that and how to spend it?
Oh,
A team?
uh,
Is it that? I think that was a question he just asked.
I'm sorry, I thought he meant standing committee, like, you know, the
Yeah.
administration or
But
executive.
is
committee.
there a group?
I think
working
there's
on
a
how to
group
spend it?
that, there is a group that meets to, you know, try to think of good ways, appropriate ways to utilize the funds in the best way, you know, so that Dunn County maximizes its service.
So that way, if we get the funding is ready to go and we already have the plan in place and whatnot. Okay,
Right.
great, thank you.
Any more speaking to the resolution? Supervisor Gilbert.
Just a, a note on, we talked about tracking the percentages or the funds. In our CJCC report, it said for pretrial assessment for 2022, heroin and opioids made up 3% of our problem areas for drug assessment on our thing there. Alcohol was 30%, as was meth. I wonder what, should we call Budweiser or somebody? I mean, if that's 30% and this is 3% of our problem. Just a note on the money on the table.
Good point. Any more speaking to the resolution? All right, seeing none. This voice vote.
There's a majority vote, yes.
That's what I thought. So, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
All right, D, ordinance amending chapter 2 of the Dunn County Code of Ordinances, rules of the board, first reading. I believe Supervisor Steen had a motion that he wanted to make.
Yes, I move to refer this ordinance. I move to refer this ordinance back to the executive committee for further discussion and consideration about adding language that would set limitations on reasons and number of times the supervisor may appear electronically each year.
All right, do we have a second? All right, Supervisor Steen, Supervisor Headland. Any further speaking to the motion to refer? All right, all in favor of referring this back to the executive committee for a little more tightening up of the language and appropriate adjustments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion goes back to the executive committee. Ordinance goes back to the executive committee. My apologies. E, resolution proclaiming April as National County Government Month. We do this pretty much every year. Larry Bjork, I believe you're moving. So motion by Supervisor Bjork, Larry Bjork. Do I have a second? Supervisor Zons. Any speaking to the motion? It's a pretty standard motion. Okay. Seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. 11, consideration of resolutions, reports, and ordinances from the standing committees. A, Planning Resource and Development Committee rezone ordinance for WILARL Enterprises LLC in the town of Menominee. Do I have a motion? Supervisor Quinn moves, Supervisor Kinnear seconds. Speaking to the motion, Supervisor Quinn.
Forward rezone request. This is a property out on Highway 29. It's actually been in commercial use over the years. And the owner, or been, but not zoned agricultural. The owner would like to rezone it general commercial, and the committee had a hearing and the town supported it. We felt like it's an appropriate rezone. We recommend approval.
Thank you, Supervisor Quinn. Any further speaking to the motion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. B, Highway Resolution designating April 17th through 2023 as Work Zone Awareness week. Again, pretty standard stuff. Do I have a motion? Supervisor Prochnow moves, Supervisor Steen seconds. Anyone wish to speak to this one? All right. Oh, Supervisor Larry Bjork.
Well, a lot of times I'm just talking off the top of my head. Believe it or not. But I had over 3 million miles with Walmart in a semi. With no accidents and no tickets, and something I'm very proud of. But it continues to amaze me that county workers, highway patrol officers, county government workers, snowplow drivers are still run into by cars on the interstate. And it's I would say it's 90% preventable. You're gonna have some 10%, like for example, if you've got an icy bridge and one car goes over bridge and they slide off and then they get out of their car to see if they had any damage. Well, then the next car that comes along has the same situation and he slides off the overpass and slams into the people on the side of the road. But I'm talking about fire trucks, ambulances, squad cars, big trucks on the side with all the lights and all the legal markings, and people will not change lanes to give that person on the side a chance even to open their door. And it's really pathetic. And well, okay. The worst example is you're driving in poor conditions and there's a vehicle up ahead on the side of the road. And you as a driver, whether you're in the semi or whether you're riding with Chris, and you get over in the left lane to give that car on the side a little room. I don't know, 5 out of 10, half the time, third of the time, somebody will use that space between you getting over and the vehicle on the side of the road to pass you on the right. Now you can blow your horn at them and you can flip them off and you can swear at them and you can do anything you want. And it ain't going to change a thing except the person that was on the side of the road is just damn lucky to be alive. So, take that home and talk to the families. And if there's anybody that ever needs a little respect, it's those workers on the side of the road helping everybody else. And they shouldn't have to be risking their lives to do it. That's it.
Thank you, Supervisor Bjork. Any further speaking? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Committee on Administration, resolution to participate, oh my, in the WISC fund. Do I have a motion? Supervisor Headland, Supervisor Morehouse. Speaking to the motion, Supervisor Headland?
Can you hear me? Thank you. All
Thank you,
right.
Supervisor Breslin.
Thank you, Mr. Breslin. The request for this resolution came to the committee administration at our February 23rd meeting. And the resolution was requested by our county investment committee. And the makeup of that committee is our county manager and our CFO and staff. And what it pertains to, and all the information is here in front of you, but is that there's a fund available for county and state entities, schools, whatever, to put aside any extra funds as a group. And so there's a fund And this is the fund that we're talking about. And they have some fixed rate vehicles, so to speak, of deposit where you can put your money in and get a guaranteed fixed rate. It was brought to our attention by the PMA Securities Group and recommended by them that we do so. And we voted unanimously at our city administration meeting to pass it to the county board for your approval. And we recommend it. Thank you.
Thank you Supervisor Headland. So the opportunity to make a few tenths of a percent more is always a good thing. Any further speaking? Seeing none, voice vote? Yes, that's what I thought. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes. Announcements. Next meeting, capital improvement planning, March 25th. And I believe in the packet, it says at 8:30, but we're now gonna have that at 10, Chris?
That's correct.
So we're going to have,
Executive committee at 8.
yes, we will have an executive committee meeting beforehand at 8 and the workshop will be at 10. Our next county board meeting general will be Wednesday, April 19th, 2023 at 7 p.m. And I believe that concludes our business. Do we have any other announcements? Seeing none, we are adjourned.